Welcome to the Leading Hope Podcast with Kevin Jack. Your influence will lead people somewhere, lead them towards hope. Everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.
Welcome to Leading Hope with Kevin Jack. I'm your host, VJ Williams, here with my friend and pastor, Kevin Jack. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your day to become a better leader. We release a new episode every Wednesday, so we'd love for you to subscribe, share on social media, and bring others along with us on this journey of becoming a better leader. Visit leadinghope.online to get updates and find out more about the Leading Hope community. Kevin, we are in episode 21, Never Waste a Crisis. Man, this is going to be interesting with everything that's going on.
Little timely.
Yeah, timely.
Yeah. So we're starting this new series today that we're just titling on RN, Leading Through Uncertainty. And man, if I could just timestamp this for anyone who's watching in the future, we are about a week into the response from our country on the coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic crisis, everything going on with that, in which our meeting restrictions have gone from 250 down to 100, and I believe they're currently standing at 50 now as the time of this recording. And so we are as much in a time of uncertainty as we have ever been in our lives.
This is true.
And so we thought, man, in the light of that, let's skew this leadership podcast to hopefully give something helpful and timely in the moment, but hopefully won't just live in the moments that we're living in right now, but that will be something that you can pull back on in the time to come. So in Leading Through Uncertainty, the title of the podcast for today is Never Waste a Crisis. And here's my guess, is that if you're in leadership, you have heard this term at some point in time. You've heard the term, never waste a crisis. And if you didn't know what someone was talking about, or if you just said it because you heard someone else say it, so you didn't even know what you were talking about in that moment, it's really easy to just kind of view that as like, oh yeah, let's be optimistic. Yeah, there's some things that can happen. Yeah, there's some good that can come out of this. But I want to actually define those things for you today, because if you're listening to this at the time of the release, you're in uncertainty. You're in a crisis. And so I want to show you what you shouldn't waste. While you're in the midst of a crisis, there are things that can happen that can't happen at any other time. And I'm not saying you should be grateful for the crisis. I'm not saying you should thank the crisis, but you shouldn't waste it. And you should acknowledge, even in the midst of uncertainty, there's some unique things that can take place. So today we're going to talk about 3 things that you shouldn't waste in the midst of a crisis. 3 things you shouldn't waste while you're in the midst of a crisis. Number 1, you shouldn't waste the opportunity to clarify what matters most. You should not waste, while you're in a crisis, while you're in uncertainty, the opportunity to clarify what matters most. When you're in this time, people are filled with thousands and thousands of questions. Some of them are about the day-to-day. Some of them are about self-preservation. Some of them are about the future and what that looks like. And within leadership, you have an opportunity to say, this is what we're about. This is what is unchanging about who we are. My guess is that you're familiar at some point in time with the 80-20 principle, or the Pareto principle, in which the basic dynamic of it is to say that 80% of the results come from 20% of the work. 80% of the significance comes from 20% of what is actually functioning within there. And what you have an opportunity within the midst of crisis is to clarify that 20% and to say, no, this is who we are. And we may have to cut some things out. We may have to change some things. We may have to scale some things down. Some things may have to go away. But this will never go away. For us as a church, one of our greatest opportunities is to say we are part of Be Hope Church. And we say, hey, we're going to be hope to those around us. We're going to continue to give a message of hope, and we're going to continue to reach out to those around us. And within the midst of this crisis, it's just given us another opportunity to say, this is who we are. And even when the world changes, we still operate at this level because this is constant. And so you have that same opportunity. You have that same opportunity within your job, within your work, within your family, to say, hey, all these things are different. Yes, we've been home for 3 straight weeks with the kids, but this is who we are. This is what we're about. And so don't waste the opportunity to clarify what matters most. Second thing that you should never waste during a crisis. Don't waste the perfect climate to change our habits. While you're in the midst of a crisis, do not waste the perfect climate to change our habits. Everything we do is determined by our behaviors, but our behaviors are the hardest thing to change because they are habitual. They are what we naturally do. And so when you are in a time of upheaval, when you're in a time of transition, when you're in a time of change, is the greatest opportunity you have to change what is those ingrained responses within you. Now, this is true of all of life. When you move from high school to college is the best time to change behaviors. When you move from single to married, when you move from just you and your spouse to kids, when you move, anytime you go through these things, you need to be just capitalizing on the opportunity. Hey, what habits and behaviors are going to change? Because I'm going to need to find some new rhythms. I'm going to need to find some new ways of doing things. And so I don't want to lose this opportunity to change my habits towards what matters most. So one of the things that we've acknowledged within this is we've had to move church entirely from a physical structure to all online. And we already had an online presence that was really good, but now everything within our church is digital. Everything is meeting online. So we've gone, hey, this is actually an opportunity. It's an opportunity to increase online engagement. It's an opportunity for us to increase online evangelism and keep talking to our people about the importance of a share and how a share of a post or a message or a service is one of the easiest invites you can give. It's given us an opportunity to talk about online giving. People can't give within the physical building right now. And so to say, hey, build a habit of giving online where your giving is regular and it's scheduled. And one of the other cool things is to say, hey, reach out to your neighbors. Like no one else is coming to your neighborhood. No one else is coming to the people around you to make sure they're checking in. And so we've got this opportunity that we've said, hey, there's uncertainty. There's a crisis. No one really knows what to do. But this is who we are. We are Be Hope Church. We're giving a message of hope, and we're hope to those around us. So as we're giving a message of hope, aid us in this by sharing and engaging online. And as we're hope to those around us, participate actively in that by reaching out to those around you who maybe don't have anyone else to check on them. So we've said, hey, it's uncertain. Let's see what behaviors can be changed. So I asked you within this, like if you're listening to this at the time of this whole pandemic and everything going on, this will be especially timely. If you're not, my guess is that you came across this not just because you were scrolling through the feed, but because you needed some help through uncertainty. Mm-hmm. What needs to change at the behavioral level? Like what needs to change within you? Within your team, be that your work team or be they your family, like what actually at the habit level needs to change and how can you connect that to what matters most in order for change to happen? So first thing that we shouldn't waste during a crisis is the opportunity to clarify what matters most. The second thing we should not waste during a crisis is the perfect climate to change our habits. And the third thing that you should never waste during a crisis is the opportunity to establish your leadership. The opportunity to establish your leadership. So let me take us all back. The first series we did on this leadership podcast is we talked about resilience. We talked about the ability to bounce back from struggles and from problems and from crises. And the leader is the one who keeps going. The leader is the one who's able to endure. And one of the words that we said within one of the things that we hope to speak over you was say, don't complain that it's hard. That's why we need leaders. If it wasn't hard, we wouldn't need leaders. If people weren't prone to throw in the towel and give up and let despair take over, we wouldn't need anyone to lead. And so be grateful for the crisis because it establishes you as a leader. And I'd like to remind you of that within this moment. I was just say, this is what I notice is it is amazing to me how quickly and how fully people give in to fear. That when there is uncertainty, how quickly people go to this is worst case scenario. And when their perspective is worst case scenario, the reality becomes worst case scenario, and they allow fear to take over their lives. And within that, to give a message of hope is one of the most powerful things you can possibly do. To walk into that environment, not claiming to have all the answers, not claiming to know how everything's to go, because that's delusional and narcissistic, and you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be that leader within this. But to walk into that situation and to say, yeah, this stinks, but this is what can come out of it. To speak words of courage and confidence into those around you is one of the most significant things you can possibly do. And so I want to tell you, maybe of all of these, the most important thing is one of the opportunities that you have in the midst of a crisis is to establish yourself as a stable leader, to establish yourself as someone who people can have confidence in, who people can follow. And don't miss that opportunity by spending your time complaining about everything that's gone bad, by allowing yourself to give into fear. Don't miss that opportunity, because it's one of the few things that can only happen in the midst of a crisis.
I love it. Fantastic word today. There's a couple here. I just wrote down just to recap here. Number one, these are the things not to waste. The opportunity to clarify what matters most. Number two, perfect climate to change our habits. Number three, establish your leadership. I'm going to write that down on the wall somewhere, because this is exactly what people need to hear in the time of what our world is called a crisis. The thing I want to stick on real quick and ask you a couple questions on is the perfect climate to change our habits, because we're seeing this right now.
Yeah.
We're seeing this in every environment that we have in this organization, but I'm seeing it all over in all people's organizations. What can we do now in order to change what our future looks like? I like what you said. If something's not working or needs enhanced, this is the time to do the hard work. Talk about that part. The hard work is now, and one thing, the dynamic of the hard work that we're doing now is that you and I and anyone in the leadership roles, we can't do it by ourselves. So talk about that piece, because I'm finding out that I have to delegate. I have to, because there's some tasks that only my skill set can do that I have to do, which means I can't do the other things that have to happen. Talk about that delegation.
So let's say it from a thinking side first. Is to say the leader has to program in their head that uncertainty means opportunity. Like, that just has to be ingrained in who you are. That when you hear or feel or see uncertainty, you're automatically thinking opportunity. And so then your next response is you're looking at the landscape and you're going, so what is that opportunity? What is the opportunity that's before us in this moment? Long-term impact always happens at the level of behaviors. Like, that's the reality. If you don't boil things down to the level of habits and behaviors and how we act and how we respond, you'll never make long-term impact. So within the midst of this moment is we're going, yeah, what do we need to get through the next month, 2 months, 3 months? I don't know exactly how long we're going to be in this, but long-term, how do we enhance, how do we strengthen what we have to do in the short term that will benefit us in the long run on that? And at the end of the day, I think we just need to acknowledge most people don't want to lead. They want to be in a position of leadership, but they don't want to actually do the work of leadership.
Yeah.
And this is the work of leadership. Like, it's not a title, it's a task, it's a calling that's upon you. And to go, man, if you don't get in this moment and you're not going, all right, how am I empowering people? How am I shifting people? How am I aligning people? And if that doesn't excite you, like, maybe you shouldn't be in leadership. Like, if you're not enthusiastic about the opportunity I'm not saying you're pumped about the crisis that you're in. Like, you're not self-loathing within that. That's not what you're looking for. But if you're not enthusiastic in some way about the opportunity of what can happen, you probably shouldn't be in leadership.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. You talked about the third piece there, establish your leadership, which you just came from there. Being grateful for the opportunity is something that I think is the anchor in which your leadership can catapult from. Anchored in gratefulness is a mindset you wake up with in the morning. You go to bed at night saying, this is the opportunity that is in my hands. What am I going to do with it? Are there any things that you do to help you have that perspective of gratefulness for the opportunity? Not that you're, like you said, excited for a crisis. It's that it's what it's been given, and what will you do with it?
So one of the things I do, this is just a really practical thing. I have a set of questions that I go through every day at the start of the day and at the end of the day. So at the start of the day, I'm clarifying priorities and I'm defining what success looks like for me to operate within those priorities. So it's just like, hey, here's the day. This is what has to get done. And this is what I need to do in order, how I need to function, how I need to think in order for that to happen. At the end of the day, it's less planning questions, more review questions that I go through. The last question I ask myself every day, and I write this down. I'm not saying these are in my head. I actually have to write it down. The last question I ask myself every day is, why am I blessed by God? Within that question is an assumption. I am blessed by God. Like I am. I fully believe that I am. The question is, why am I? Am I seeing the ways in which I've already been blessed by God? And I think that just grounds me in this perspective of, hey, whatever is coming my way, God is still blessing me. God is still working in my life. Just one of the things that Jesus repeatedly says is, give them eyes to see. And go, we have eyes. We just may not have eyes that see. And I want eyes that see the blessings that God has given me. And I want eyes that see all the reasons for me to be grateful.
That's great. I'm writing that down right now. Clarify the strategy. So you're waking up and you're saying, I'm clarifying the strategy. I'm going to define what success looks like for today.
Yep.
And I'm realizing God's blessing is upon me.
Yep.
That is. I hope you guys don't write it down if you're driving.
Don't write it down if you're driving.
But stop at some point today, go back, rewind, whatever you need to take, and write that down. I think that helps every leader be grateful for the opportunity that's been given, whether it's good. And we don't want to waste the opportunity. I mean, I know that's what we've titled it, but why would you let something like this go to waste for nothing? Like the attitude that you have of either complaint or triumph, that God is with you, obviously, but that you get to make a decision. What are you going to do? Are you going to complain and draw back? Or are you going to go into it? I always think of first responders, man. They're running to, how can I help?
Yeah.
It's an incredible attitude.
We're not thrilled at the trial, but we can fully acknowledge that we can come out of the trial stronger than we were when we went into it. And so that's what we're grateful for. We're grateful for the opportunity to come out better than we were beforehand.
Yeah, I think of that song, and I know that we sing it a lot on Sundays. But I'm going with God's help, I'm going to turn what was meant for evil and turn it for good. And that's the mindset that I want to have when I go into a meeting room or whatever crisis we're facing. Is, hey, this is what it is. How are we going to make it better?
Yep.
That's awesome, man. I think that's all we've got for today. And obviously, we're going to continue the series with the state that we're in. So don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. We love hearing your stories of how this podcast is working for you. We want to hear your stories of how you're handling this particular crisis in your business environments, your families. Send us your story on leadinghope.online. There's a form you can fill out. We want to hear from you. And we can't wait to hear from you guys. It's been a pleasure to be with you guys today. And remember, everyone has 20 minutes to become a better leader. Make it count.